everyone, this is Yana Smakula for SimonsSTM.com, and thanks for joining me today. I'm excited to bring you another episode from my bi-monthly Yippee for Yana video series. In today's video, I'm showing you how to take cross-stitching and quickly apply it onto paper with Waffle Flower cross-stitch stamps. I spotted these at Creativation Show back in January and was very much impressed and fascinated by the concept. Here I have a few of their cross-stitch sets, and I wanted to share a quick look at them before we jump into today's project. So this is the Stitched Roses. I will be using this set to create my cards today. This is a gorgeous set that features 2 roses and 3 leaves, as well as some cross-stitch sentiments. Next, there is a Cactus cross-stitch set. Cacti are very popular lately, and I'm very excited to see more and more cacti images in stamping. So there's a larger and a smaller cactus, as well as a pot, and also some fun mountains to create a landscape. You also have a cross-stitch water and some smiley faces. Another cross-stitch set that I have here is the Stitched Unicorn. You have a unicorn in a frame and a galloping unicorn as well. And there's your magical sentiment that goes so well with this set. The last stitch set I have here is a Stitched Cup of Tea. Fabulous friendship set. You have a teapot, a cup and a saucer, and also a stitched "You're my cup of tea" sentiment. There are also little swirly bits and pieces, and you can use those with any of the cross-stitch elements on your projects. I will be stamping several cards today, and I have already pre-cut my white paper pieces to layer onto 4-bar cards. I'm very much enjoying a 4-bar size lately. I'm taking a break from the A2 size. Now, I need to point out that I'm making a 4-bar card and not an A2 card because this size is often deceiving. It might look like this is an A2 card, and thus stamped elements look bigger than they really are. So this is just something to keep in mind. Images shown in this video are not going to look as big on an A2 card size. Like I mentioned, I'm using Stitched Roses, and this set is a bit difficult to align in a sense that you need to have perfect alignment for great results. I do recommend using a stamp positioner like Misty just because it makes stamping these roses a much easier task. When you look at this stamp set, it has the instructions for you right there on the sheet. There are letters and numbers. Letters indicate which shade of ink needs to be used for that layer. A light, medium, and dark. And the numbers indicate the layers to the same flower. So you have A1, A2, A3. And then there is another flower, and you have B1, B2, and B3. There's also a little flower bud marked C1 and C2, and it is attached to the B flower layers. There's a C leaf, and that indicates that the leaf goes together with the flower bud. You also have an A leaf, and it goes together with an A flower, and B leaves, and those go together with a B flower. So it's pretty straightforward, although the stamp set does take a little bit of practice. The way I like to stamp my images, the way I find it easiest for me, I like to start with the top, most darkest layer. This way, I'm able to see much better through the stamp to align my medium and bottom layers much better. I'm going to position the B3 layer onto my paper, and will close the door of my Misty, and will go ahead and stamp this using lipstick red ink. I'm double stamping this in all other layers to get more vibrant ink color. Next, I'm going to use a B2 layer, and I'm going to align it on my stamped image. Because I have the first layer stamped in a darker color, I can now much better see where the next layer needs to go. This is just a neat trick I do, and I actually do this with all of my color layering stamps. If I ever have trouble aligning something, I always start with the top, darkest layer. So when aligning, you want to pay attention to this section over here, and also to this one here. I'm using Hollyhock ink, and we'll go ahead and stamp this. We have a perfect alignment. I'm going to go ahead and double stamp this as I didn't really do a good job the first time. Time to stamp the top B1 layer. You want to position this layer to fill in the gaps. There aren't supposed to be any gaps in this image, and this step is actually fairly easy. It's not hard to align this layer. I'm using Twirling Tutu ink color and again double stamping this image. And our cross-stitch flower is ready. And this stamping, even though it's a little bit hard to align, certainly took less time to do than actual cross stitching. Let's stamp the C leaf now so that the large flower and the little flower bud are connected. You want to look at this little corner and this top edge when aligning your image. I'm using willow ink color to stamp this and going to double stamp this again. As soon as you add that leaf, it starts to look like a floral cluster. It begins to take its shape. I want to create a cluster and I want to add 2 more flowers, A flowers. In order to make my flowers look a little bit more different, I'm going to position one of the flowers sideways and another flower is going to be upside down. I'm starting with a flower that is positioned sideways. This time, I'm going to start with the lightest layer just to show you that you can stamp these the usual way. Another reason I'm starting with the bottom layer is to be able to better position my flower next to the bee flower I already have. I am positioning my flower so that there is one empty row of stitches in between the flower at the top and the flower at the bottom. I'm using the exact same ink color to stamp this flower, so twirling tutu for the bottom layer. Let's align the second layer, A2. So the lonely stitch goes on top of that row. So it sits in between the 2 flowers. And you also want to pay attention to the bottom row of stitches. Again, I'm double stamping this using Hollyhock ink color. And we have great alignment. Let's align the third A3 layer. And this is again pretty easy. You just want to make sure to fill in the gaps and have no empty stitches on your flower. And I'm stamping this using lipstick red. Now, it did not align perfectly, but I think I did a pretty good job and I'm happy with this flower. I am not going to re-stamp this. Time to stamp the third flower. I'm going to flip my paper upside down because my third flower is going outside the edge, and the way my paper is positioned right now, the misty edge is preventing me from stamping it the way I want. Again, I'm going to start with the bottom layer, and this is how I positioned it in relation to the other flowers. This side is almost right next to the other flower, but here I am leaving a bit more room for some extra stitches. And I'm just going to repeat stamping this flower onto my panel. Next, I'm stamping the leaves. I'm going with the bee leaves first. These go together with the bee flower, and this is how I have them positioned. You want to pay attention to this section. Again, I'm using willow ink color in double stamping this. And we also have a leaf to add to our panel. I'm going to add this to both of my A flowers, and I'll place it in different sections. The leaves are designed to sort of dock into specific parts of the flower, but that doesn't mean you can't have them placed in a different spot. As long as your leaf and flower stitches do not overlap, you should be good. But even if they do overlap, that would just add a little bit to the overall handmade look and feel of your card. When I was first stamping my flowers, when I was practicing, I had a lot of stitches overlapping, and I also had some empty spaces in my flowers. They looked great. So if you love your flowers with the overlapped stitches and some empty spaces, go for it. To create a sentiment for this card, I'm going to use a round happy birthday message from the Circle Sayings stamp set from Simon. This is an older set that I have rediscovered recently. I'm loving it for all sorts of cards. I'm going to use a round sentiment here to somewhat help me frame my piece and create the illusion of a hoop, of an embroidery hoop. In order to stamp this, I need to mask a part of my image, and I have already created masks using masking paper, so I'm just going to mask the parts and pieces of my image that overlap with the sentiment to protect them. I'm using Simon's khaki ink color to stamp the sentiment. I really like this light brown color, and I think it's a perfect match to the craft cardstock that I plan to use for my card base. And I'm stamping this a few times as it didn't stamp well the first. I'm going to remove my masks, and I just love this look. I think round sentiments add just a perfect touch to these cross-stitched flowers. I'm also going to stamp a simple happy birthday sentiment in black ink. I'm stamping onto craft paper, the same paper I'm using for my card base. I have already foam mounted my panels onto 4 bar cards, and I'm going to foam mount these sentiments on top. You can change up the sentiments and make these cards for another occasion. I think this design would make a great Mother's Day card and also fabulous thank you or miss you cards. I'm using Scrapbook Adhesive's large foam squares. I'm cutting them into strips and going to foam mount my sentiments onto the cards. Lastly, I'm going to add a few dots using Nuvo Crystal Drops in apple green. So this finishes today's video. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope I was able to inspire you to create. Be sure to give this idea a try and do tag us on social media so we can take a peek at your projects. You can find a list of supplies I used for this project down below. Be sure to give this video a thumbs up and to subscribe to this channel if you haven't yet done so. Thank you so much for joining me today. I will see you next time. Bye!